और मैं अपने इस टॉक के दौरान बहुत से आपको ड्रग्स दिखाऊंगा जो कि मार्केट में आए और गायब हो गए, और इसी साइकोलॉजी को भुनाने के लिए रोज टीवी पे अनगिनत नॉन अप्रूव्ड फार्माकोलॉजिकल प्रोडक्ट्स विज्ञापन के लिए आते हैं कि आप ये करिए वजन घट जाएगा, वो पीजिए वजन घट जाएगा, और आपके पास लोग भी आते हैं कि साहब इसको आप इस्तेमाल कीजिए, बट दे आर ऑल मार्केटेड एज न्यूट्रास्यूटिकल्स, not as a pharmaceutical agent. So today I will be talking about the pharmacological agents which are available globally and those which are available to us in India. So let me share my slides to you. This is our today's topic, pharmacotherapy for obesity. Most of the slides, they were provided to me by Sanofi, which have been designed by Endocrine Society, but many of the slides I have added and changed, which I have mostly derived from a CME activity done by Medscape. That is a very good activity, and from there I have taken some slides for today's presentation. And today's presentation is not advocacy for any particular drug. It is just an awareness program, and to make you aware what are the things which we are currently utilizing for weight reduction, and you are earnestly requested to refer the full prescribing information before prescribing any product. So what is the rationale for obesity pharmacotherapy? Obesity causes more than 200 other medical disorders that affect the entire organ system. So it is a very big list, but some of it like joint problems, sleep apnea, diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, cardiovascular disease, cancer, these are few to name with, but there are innumerable more than 200 medical disorders which are basically born out of obesity. And it accounts for more than 4 million deaths worldwide and a high cardiovascular disease burden. Prevalence is rapidly increasing because of two things. Number one, more and more adaptive modalities which consume less energy, like motorbikes, scooters, vehicles, lift, escalators. So we are reducing our physical exertion. On the other hand, we are replacing our traditional diet with rich, calorie-dense, fat-laden fast foods. So these are the two things which are rapidly changing the scenario, and we are getting more and more obese. So in this slide, you will see the relationship between BMI and risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus. The upper graph is of women and the lower one is for the men. And you will just see that from the range of 23 to 25, there is almost a steady curve. But as you go above 25, the incidence of diabetes increases very rapidly, both in men and in women. And for the relative risk of death from cardiovascular disease, cancer, and all other causes, you will see that for the cancer, it is almost a flat curve with BMI going gradually upwards. But for the cardiovascular and all other causes, it is a U-shaped or bell-shaped curve. So if you are underweight, then again the cardiovascular disease risk is high. All other causes are high. And if you are overweight, more your BMI, again the two things, cardiovascular and all other causes, the relative risk increases. Treatment criteria for by BMI. This BMI criteria which I am just now telling you is from years. Very nice to see you, Dr. Om Prakash. Below 18.5, we call it as underweight. And 18.5 to 24.9 or 25, for a rough remembrance, that is normal. And you will see that from the US data, only 6.3% of the population falls in this category, 18.5 to 24.9. Rest all are above it, that is, they are either overweight or obese. From 25 to 29.9, it is overweight. Once you go above 30, you become obese. And then to obese, there are three levels, 1, 2, and 3, depending upon the BMI. 30 to 35, more than 40. So roughly about 90% of the population is either overweight or obese. This is the magnitude of the problem. If you come to the Asia Pacific guidelines, which applies to us, our BMI is 2 point less than that of the parameter. Underweight is the same, 18.5. Less than 18.5, it is underweight. In WHO criteria for the Western population, normal is 18.5 to 24.9. But for the Indians, it becomes 18.5 to 22.9. That means 2 points less. In Caucasian, overweight is 25 to 30, 29.9. In Asia Pacific, once you are above 24.9, 23 to 24.9 is overweight. And obese, in Caucasian, it is more than 30 is obese. But for us, if we are more than 25, we fall under the category of obese. Why so? Why this criteria is different for we Asian people? So I will be showing you this very beautiful and very classical slide, which is often quoted in different conferences. And you are seeing two persons in the middle. One is a Caucasian one, who is Dr. Yudkin, and the other on the right hand with the beard is an Indian fellow, Dr. Chittaranjan Yagnik. CS Yagnik, he is in KEM Hospital, Pune. He is a great researcher. And during his research over the fetal origin of adulthood diseases, he was in England working with Dr. Yudkin. One day they both thought that why not we should ourselves also get our BMI and fat estimation done. They got their BMI done, and just see the coincidence that the BMI of the two people is at the same 22.8. But when they did the percentage of body fat by using DEXA, the body fat of Yudkin was 9.1%, and that of Chittaranjan Yagnik was 21.2%. So if you just take into consideration the BMI, both are healthy. And according to the Asian criteria also, Yagnik is falling below 23. So he is a healthy individual. But if you see the fat content, his body fat content is 2.25 times more than that of his Caucasian counterpart. So we Indians with the same BMI have more body fat, and that is also in the viscera. So with this study, they coined a new term, thin fat Indian. So we are thin fat Indian. By BMI we are thin, but still we are fat. And this is what we call it as Indian phenotype. That is why we Indian need a more stringent and strict BMI criteria. And also, we Indians have a tendency to develop waist or visceral fat much more than that of the Caucasian part. Whenever we gain weight, first of all, we deposit weight in our abdomen. While the Caucasian individuals, they deposit fat on the back, on the arms, on the thighs. But we Indians, we will have a thin arms and thighs, but a abdomen. So waist circumference is also very important, and waist hip ratio is more important criteria for we Asians to denote whether the person is overweight or obese. So waist circumference is 85 centimeter for men and 80 centimeter for women. In the Western context, it is 90 centimeter and 95 centimeter, 85 and 90 centimeter. And for the waist hip ratio, it is 0.89 for men and 0.81 for women. So this is also very important. Now let us come to the mechanism of food intake. We get obese because of calorie imbalance, and that calorie imbalance is because of two things: more intake and less expenditure. So what are those things which govern our food intake? It is a very complex phenomena which involves so many factors you will see in this slide. Number one is the family and social influences and cultural influences also. Same food can be very tempting and salivating for a particular cultural group or individual, and maybe nauseating for some other group. A person may get hunger after smelling seafood, while another who is not never eaten a seafood may get nauseated. A non-vegetarian will have more appetite on seeing a non-vegetarian dish, while a strict vegetarian will start feeling loss of appetite. So it is the family, social, cultural influences which govern the appetite, the food, the sensory factors like taste, smell, texture, sight, effects of variety, how many types of dishes have been laid down. As you go in any buffet party these days, there are so many varieties of dishes that even if you just taste each and every variety, it becomes too much. Sensory specific satiety, palatability, food concentration, ready availability. If the thing is very readily available, you eat more. Cognitive factors like conscious rational control, whether you are able to think why you are eating, is it needed or not. If you're not able to think, then definitely you will eat more. Beliefs about the food, advertising. This is a very important thing in today's era, advertising the food, and more consumption of fast food is because of this advertising industry. Then the brain mechanisms modulate these brain mechanisms, they modulate sensory factors by satiety signals to produce reward value and appetite. There are two types of signals in the brain. One is the reward signal, which gives reward. When you eat something, it makes you feel happy. When you feel happy, you like to eat more. That is a reward signal, and this is basically opioid based signals. Then there are satiety signals, there are hunger signals. We will be discussing this in the coming slides, which control your eating. So this is a depiction in this cartoon. On the top you are seeing the brain. On the hindbrain there is nucleus tractus solitarius, which basically receives the signals by the gut, through gut with vagus nerve, and this is communicated then to the hypothalamus. In the hypothalamus, in the later, there is an arcuate nucleus which has got two basic parts. One is the POMC, proprioceptive melanocortin center, and the other is the AGRP, agouti related protein, and neuropeptide Y center. These two centers, they act in a opposite manner. One causes, the POMC causes satiety, while the AGRP and PI causes hunger and increase in food intake. So there are different signals from the different parts of the body which reach to the hypothalamus, and either they stimulate POMC or they stimulate AGRP and PY part of the hypothalamus in the arcuate nucleus, and either they cause satiety or they cause increase in appetite and more eating. Like from the, though there are two main signals, like leptin derived from the adipose tissue, this goes and stimulates the POMC and causes satiety. And when there is leptin resistance, there are certain cases where there is genetic defect in the leptin sensitivity and there is leptin resistance. These child, they become obese. Then there is insulin, which also causes increase in hunger because of creating hypoglycemia. There are satiety signals like CCK, cholecystokinin, GLP-1, polypeptide YY. These are released from the gut, from the fundus of the stomach. Ghrelin is released when anybody is fasting. This ghrelin is released, which goes through vagus nerve, also to the nucleus tractus solitarius, and directly goes to the AGRP and NPY center and stimulates the center for hunger and to eat. So gut peptides that regulate appetite, they are a cholecystokinin, which are released after taking the meal. This cholecystokinin causes release of bile juices into the gut, that helps in motility, in digestion, and also goes to the brain and causes satiety. There are secretin, which causes pancreatic exocrine secretion, GIP, released from the gut. This also causes satiety. Motilin causes increase, which affects the gastrointestinal motility. Ghrelin is released from the upper fundal part of the stomach, and this is the only hormone which is released from the gut, which causes hunger. And this is usually released when a person is fasting for a long duration and feels hungry. This is the natural inbuilt hormone. When anybody is fasting for too long, this causes hunger and person wants to eat. From the ileum, from the pancreas, insulin glucagon are released, and from the ileum, GLP-1 hormone is released. So GLP-1 is released, which we are using the analog of GLP-1 hormone in our pharmacotherapeutics for obesity. GLP-2 we are not using. Oxyntomodulin also this also causes sedation, but which we are not using in our pharmacotherapy. PYY also causes satiety. This is polypeptide YY released from the ileum, but this is also not being utilized in the pharmacotherapy. Only thing which we are utilizing is GLP-1 analog hormones. Now, what is the importance of hypothalamus in the appetite regulation? Hypothalamus is the center or the seat of appetite regulation. This was realized by the observers that whenever there is some damage to the hypothalamus, either because of craniopharyngioma, head trauma, sarcoidosis, aneurysms, meningioma, metastasis, surgery, or radiation, there is sudden increase in the appetite. The person becomes abruptly obese. So there is something in the hypothalamus which regulates appetite. This was the observation. And this is a typical graph of a patient who has undergone craniotomy for craniopharyngioma, and then you see that the patient started gaining weight with headache, and when diagnosis was made of craniopharyngioma, craniotomy was done, and then he lost weight. Then again radiation was given, started steroid, again he gained weight because of steroid hormones. So this is how. Now I will just focus on this slide in a bit detail so that you can understand the mechanisms of different pharmaceutical agents which are being used currently, that how they help in reducing the weight. So I've already talked to you in the previous slides that in the hypothalamus, in the arcuate nucleus, there are two centers. One is POMC CART center and the other is NPY AGRP center. Just if you even forgot the name, don't worry. Just remember there are two centers. One center, the POMC CART center, the propioptic melanocortin and caffeine amphetamine receptor transcript center. This center is 5-hydroxytryptamine receptor rich center. So if there is increase in 5-hydroxytryptamine or serotonin in the brain, it acts on the receptor and stimulates POMC and CART. And when POMC and CART is stimulated, the second order neuron causes release of melanocyte stimulating hormone. This MSH release goes and acts on MC3/4 receptor, and then this causes satiety, less intake of food, and increase in the energy expenditure, increase in the basal metabolic rate. So this POMC stimulation causes satiety and weight loss. While on the other hand, the NPY and AGRP center, when stimulated, causes increase in hunger and increase in food intake and less calorie burn. So these two centers, they act opposite to each other in a seesaw manner, in a yin-yang manner. And the vagus nerve carries all the information from the gut, its motility, fullness, to the nucleus tractus solitarius in the hindbrain, and this again ultimately communicates to the hypothalamus. Now, what are those things which stimulate POMC and CART to cause satiety? Leptin. Leptin causes satiety, the adiposity signal. PYY, GLP-1, polycystin, CCK, they cause satiety. These act on the hunger center and they depress the hunger center. They suppress the hunger center, and hence they cause less food intake. Ghrelin causes increase in appetite through stimulating the NPY AGRP center and causes increase in hunger, increased food intake, less calorie expenditure. So most of the drugs which are developed, they are developed to act on POMC CART center so that satiety can be produced, patient eats less, and there is more of an energy expenditure and a gradual weight loss. So taking all these into consideration, in 2015, the Endocrine Society laid down its clinical practice guideline for pharmacological management of obesity. And what are those guidelines? If you see this pyramid, still the 50% of the pyramid is covered by diet, exercise, and behavioral modification. This is the mainstay of weight loss therapy. This is the fundamental to all obesity management. And the person, if is not able to achieve the goal with this, then you should try for pharmacotherapy and even after that the person is not able to achieve the target, then one should go for bariatric surgery. So now what is the criteria to label any drug as an anti-obesity drug? When you will say that this drug fulfills the criteria to be utilized as an anti-obesity drug, to be marketed as an anti-obesity drug. The standard guidelines were issued in the mid of 1990s. A new drug must induce statistically significant placebo-adjusted weight loss of more than 5% at 1 year. So the patient should take the drug for at least 1 year and there should be more than 5% weight loss, or more than 35% of the patient should achieve 5% weight loss, which must be at least twice that induced by the placebo. So if it is a randomized controlled trial, you are using a placebo and the active ingredient to be labeled as an anti-obesity drug. If the loss is more than 5%, but the placebo is also giving a loss of 4%, then it is not the twice of that of placebo. So it will not classify as anti-obesity drug. So it should be more than twice that induced by placebo. So in addition, the medication is required to show evidence of improvement in metabolic biomarkers also, including blood pressure, lipid levels, and glycemic control. So on these criteria, let us see. And now you will just see in these 2-3 slides that since 1939, people have been in quest of searching an anti-obesity drug. They came into market, stayed for a few years, then because of some or the other problems were withdrawn. Like most of the reason for withdrawal was either a cardiotoxicity, drug abuse, depression, agitation, so either a liver toxicity. So either it was psychiatric reason for which the drug was withdrawn or cardiac reason for which the drug was withdrawn. Of late, one of the drug which came into market and stayed for roughly about 2 years was rimonabant, which was a cannabinoid receptor, CB2 receptor blocker, and this caused a lot of depression and suicidal tendency, and after 2 years it was withdrawn. So just, I will not name each and every drug, just see the list of drugs which have been developed, came into market and then withdrawn. These are the list of drugs. And just see. So the FDA has approved as now 5 drugs to be used as an anti-obesity drug. One is Orlistat, which is available in India. The other is Lorcaserin, which was made available in India but is now withdrawn. I will tell you why. Phentermine plus topiramate combination by the name of Qsymia. It is not available in India. It is available in the Western market. Naltrexone bupropion combination, Contrave, again available in the Western market but still not marketed in India. Liraglutide, which was basically developed as an anti-diabetic drug, which is a GLP-1 receptor analog and is being used in treatment of diabetes, hyperglycemia. Its dose of 3 mg per day by the name of Saxenda is recommended by FDA to be used for long-term use as an anti-obesity drug, even in those who are not. And we have got liraglutide. Only 2 drugs are now available. Was made available in India by Sun Pharma, but of late in March, FDA detected some cancer issues with this molecule and issued guidelines and warnings for observation. And now even in the US market, this drug is being withdrawn by those companies that are marketing. So how did this molecule acted was that it is a selective 5-hydroxytryptamine and we have agonists, they act on POMC center, which when is stimulated causes appetite suppression. It is and gives satiety feeling. So this is how this molecule was acting. Before this Lorcaserin, fenfluramine was being used with phentermine combination for weight loss, and this gave very good weight loss. But it was later on found that fenfluramine caused, and this also acted through 5-HT2B receptor activation. But it was later on found that this product, fenfluramine, caused valvulopathy, and it was withdrawn. This is the Elfens, which was launched by Sun Pharma, but within 3 months of launch, the FDA guidelines came and this was withdrawn. If you see for the slides of this Bloom trial done by lorcaserin, this is the placebo, this is lorcaserin in 2 doses, this is lorcaserin. Then in the lorcaserin group, they had 2 groups. In one, they continued lorcaserin throughout the study, and the other group was switched over again to placebo, and the group which was switched over to placebo again regained weight. But there was a statistically significant weight loss. Since fenfluramine showed valvulopathy and was withdrawn, the FDA made it mandatory for this molecule, lorcaserin, to monitor the cardiac pathology, and echocardiographic monitoring endpoints were laid down for valvulopathy. On this criteria, this drug passed this acid test. It did not show any cardiac problem, but later on some cancer issues were raised and this drug again went out of the market. And this did not increase the rate of FDA valvulopathy. But now this is not in the market, so I will not go in much detail of this slide. Let me come to the other combination, which is still not available in India, but marketed and utilized in the Western world, is naltrexone and bupropion combination. And this is designed around a dual mode of action to initiate and sustain weight loss. We all know that bupropion is a serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. It is an antidepressant drug. So when this drug is used, it is a serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. The level of serotonin is increased. And when the level of serotonin will be increased, it will stimulate the POMC center and cause satiety. On the other hand, naltrexone is an opioid receptor antagonist and is basically used in the psychiatric practice for opioid dependence and alcohol dependence, while bupropion is used for smoking cessation, for nicotine dependence. So this naltrexone is an alpha melanocyte stimulating hormone, and what it does is that it blocks the beta endorphin modulated POMC auto-inhibiting, leading to sustained alpha melanocyte release and depression of the appetite or suppression of the appetite. So both these two drugs, the bupropion and naltrexone, by two different mechanisms, they act on POMC and upregulate the POMC and cause satiety. And these are the trials, COR1, COR2 trial. And you will just see that even in COR1 trial, this is the placebo and this is the combination in 2 doses. There is a statistically significant weight loss as per the criteria laid down by the Endocrine Society of more than 5%. And this is COR2 again, a significant weight loss. And this is patients achieving more than 5%, more than 10, and more than 15% of weight loss. And this is COR2 again, more than 5, more than 10, and more than 15% of weight loss. So in all the three category, 5, 10, and 15, there was a statistically significant weight loss, more than double of that of the placebo. So that is why it was approved to be used as an anti-obesity drug, and it is being used in the Western world for treatment of obesity. But still we do not have this drug. But the main thing is that the treatment emergent adverse events, this, if you will see that the patient discontinuing the treatment because of adverse event, it is to the tune of 24% in COR2 trial as compared to placebo, which was 13%. So a good number of patients, almost 1/4 of the patients, they dropped the treatment because of symptoms like headache, constipation, dizziness, vomiting, dry mouth, insomnia. So you have to be very watchful when prescribing this drug. Now the third combination which I am going to tell you is phentermine plus topiramate. These two drugs are separately available in the market, but a combination is still not available. Similarly, bupropion is available in the market separately for the psychiatric use. Naltrexone is also available in the market separately for psychiatric use, but a combination drug is not available for weight loss purpose. Now, phentermine is a sympathomimetic agent. And topiramate is basically an anti-epileptic agent. How does topiramate A act is still not clear, but somehow it acts through GABA activation and GABA receptor activation, and through some acting on the calcium channels, on inhibiting carbonic anhydrase, modulating lipoprotein lipase. So there are various mechanisms which have been implicated, but the exact mechanism is still not clear. And it was an observation that many of the patients who were given topiramate for either migraine or for epileptic purpose, they developed anorexia and they lost weight. I have also observed this in two of my patients who were given topiramate for migraine, that within 3 months they lost 5 to 6 kg weight. So when this was observed, then this was being utilized as an anti-obesity drug in combination with phentermine. Phentermine is also available separately. It is not available in Indian market, but it is available in the Western market for the weight loss with different name. And a combination is now also available with the two drugs in different dose combination. You can just see 64 milligram topiramate, 96. This is the topiramate and obesity. You can just see that as you increase the dose of topiramate, there is loss of weight. This is the percentage of weight loss. It can go up to 8% of the body weight loss, which is more than 5%. And these are 3 dose combinations: 23 milligram topiramate, 3.7 milligram of phentermine, 46, 7.5, 92, and 15. So low dose, mid dose, and full dose. So there are 3 doses available in the market to be used as per the need. And this is the results of the trial. You can just see that this is weight loss over the time. This is placebo. This is the low dose. This is the full dose. And if you see the full dose, the percentage of weight loss is roughly about 14% in full dose. Similarly, roughly about 14% weight loss, 30 pounds. 15% weight loss, 10%, and 5%. 5% weight loss, almost more than 85% of the patients who were given the full dose, they achieved the more than 5% weight loss. But again, the complications are, the side effects are same: dry mouth, tingling, constipation, altered taste, insomnia, dizziness, nausea, blurred vision, depression, irritability, anxiety. So, and you will just see that again here, discontinuation due to adverse event, roughly about in the full dose 18%, and in the mid dose 12% of the patients, they discontinued the treatment because they were not able to tolerate the side effects. Now let us come to liraglutide. This is available in India. Liraglutide is available in 2 forms. One is to be utilized for treatment of diabetes, which is available by the name of Victoza, being marketed by Novo, and the other is Saxenda, which is being marketed by Novo for weight loss. So in diabetes, we usually use either 1.2 or 1.8 milligram of the dose daily to be injected subcutaneously. But for weight loss, the dose is 3 milligram per day. And the beauty is that this can be used in non-diabetics without causing hypoglycemia. How does it work? It works through, again, hypothalamus. It causes satiety by acting on the PUMC center and lateral hypothalamic center. And it also causes delayed gastric emptying. So by delayed gastric emptying, it gives a feeling of fullness. And by acting on the hypothalamus, again, it gives satiety. So there is loss of appetite. Basically, this drug causes loss of appetite, and with this, there is less intake of food and there is weight loss. So this dose is 3 milligram. The main thing is that it is to be given in a graded fashion. A low dose is to be given initially so that the patient may not discontinue the treatment because of vomiting or nausea. So start with 0.6 or even with 0.3 milligram subcutaneously once daily for 7 days or even for 14 days, and gradually up titrate the dose to 1.2, then 2.4, and then 3 milligram within say 1 to 2 months. And then this is to be continued for a longer duration of time. What are the contraindications? Number 1, if there is family history of multiple endocrine neoplasia type 2, or the patient has history of MEN2, then this drug is contraindicated. or there is a history of medullary thyroid cancer in family or to the patient which has been treated, then this drug is contraindicated. So this should be taken into consideration. Or if the patient is having gallstones, recent attack of cholecystitis, pancreatitis, increase in heart rate, renal impairment, then these are the things which should be taken into care and better to avoid this drug and not to be used. The common adverse events are nausea, which is a drug property. Sometimes it may cause hypoglycemia because it acts through GLP-1 receptor stimulation, which causes suppression of glucagon and release of insulin from the beta cells in a glucose-dependent fashion. Diarrhea, constipation, vomiting, headache, decreased appetite, dyspepsia, abdominal pain, fatigue, dizziness, increase in lipase level, suicidal behavior or ideation. So it is to be started in a low dose and gradually the dose is up titrated and reached to the maximum dose in observation. So if you see the weight loss, here you will see that the treatment from the baseline reported, it was 8.4 kg in this scale obesity pre-diabetes trial, and when compared to placebo, it was 2.8 kg as compared to more as compared to placebo. And the percentage of patient losing more than 5% baseline weight, which is the criteria, it was 63.2% of the patient, they achieved this criteria of more than 5%, which ideally should be more than 35% of the patient achieving more than 5% to be labeled as an anti-obesity drug versus 27.1 for the placebo. Now Orlistat. This is the other drug which is available in India, but not so much utilized because of its cost factor. Long sustained action is not there, and because of GI side effects. So this is basically a pancreatic and gastric lipase inhibitor. So when you take this drug, this goes into the intestine, blocks the gastric lipase and pancreatic lipase, and blocks the absorption of fat in the diet. So this basically cuts down the calorie by not allowing fat to be absorbed, and then that fat is excreted through the stool. So the stool becomes greasy and causes sometimes gripping pain, bloating, fullness of abdomen, the malabsorption of fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K. So, and may cause cholestasis. So it is not to be used in patients having a history of cholestasis or cholecystitis or gallstones. But the effect is till you take the drug. Most of the patients, they are not able to tolerate the dose of 120 milligram TDS because of they may unknowingly pass stool into the undergarment and the stool is very greasy. The overall weight loss as compared to the placebo was 5.8 kg, and when compared to the overall was 5.8 and when compared to the placebo was 3 kg, and 52.8% achieved the desired goal of more than 5% weight loss at 4 years. But I have not seen any of my patients who was prescribed this drug to take this drug more than 3 or 4 months because it is very costly. And it causes 2, 3, 4 kg of weight loss, not more than that. And it is very difficult for this drug to be continued for more than 6 months. Patient doesn't tolerate it. The main issue is maintenance of weight loss. Even if you lose the weight, the maintenance of weight loss is very difficult and is a challenging job. And you'll just see that if you have a strict follow-up, then the mean weight loss from baseline 31.3 kg at 5 years. At baseline, the loss was 31.3 kg. 5 years, it became 23.8 kg, and 10 years, 23.1 kg. In those who were participating with consent for the follow-up for 10 years. So if you follow up again and again, then you can have a sustained weight loss, otherwise patient regains the weight. And the causes which lead to this regain is decrease in leisure time physical activity, decrease in dietary restraint, decrease in self-weighing frequency, ना आप वजन नापोगे, ना आपको चिंता होगी, ना आप अपना डाइट कट डाउन करोगे, ना फिजिकल एक्टिविटी बढ़ाओगे. एक बार वेट अचीव हो गया, then the patient they stop taking their weight. They don't go on the weighing scale, and gradually they go on putting on weight, and once it is more than 10 kg, 15 kg, then they again become worried. So this is also very important that regular weight checking should be there, and for that, for the success of sustained weight loss is the frequent patient follow-up. This is the key. At least monthly for first 3 months, then at least every 3 months. One should follow up the patient, or the patient should go to the dietitian or physician for follow-up and further guidance. Otherwise, again, there will be regain in the weight. And the Medicaid or the Medicare system in US, which is the insurance companies which pay for the treatment, they allow 15 visits per year. These are the other novel mechanisms which are under development. Most of them are bariatric surgery related, and this is bariatric surgery is a vast topic, and it is a separate topic which we are not dealing today. We are dealing the pharmacotherapy of obesity. Bariatric surgery is a different topic. But even if after pharmacotherapy you are not able to achieve the goal, then you go for bariatric surgery. It has got its different indications, guidelines, different types of bariatric surgery are there. So it is a huge topic and needs a separate time to discuss. So in summary, appetite control and energy expenditure are regulated by peripheral and central signaling mechanisms. Newer anti-obesity agents target these processes. Due to the complexity of the hypothalamic circuitry, combined drug therapy is likely to be more effective than monotherapy for weight control. And we have got two drugs, bupropion plus naltrexone combination and phentermine plus topiramate combination. Anti-obesity medications are anticipated to have a more significant role in treatment of patients with obesity. And with this, I humbly thank you all for your patient listening and joining me today in this webinar. Thank you so much. Now it's open for question answer.
Thank you, Dr. Alok sir. I request now audience to, if they have any query on the topic, they can unmute themselves and ask the question.
Hello.